If you ever feel like you're bad at your job, just remember the organizers of the 1904 Olympic Marathon. This wasn't a race. It was a 26-mile crime scene. Out of 32 runners, only 14 finished. Between the rat poison, the stray dogs, and the hitchhiking, it's a miracle anyone survived. Welcome to Probably Didn't Happen, 100% factual-ish. So let's set the scene. It's 1904 St. Louis, Missouri. The city is hosting the World's Fair, and the Olympics are kind of a sideshow. The organizers, for some reason, think this is the perfect time and place to host the most prestigious endurance event in the world, the marathon. Now, St. Louis in August is hot. And I don't just mean warm. We're talking over 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 Celsius with crushing humidity. It's the kind of weather where you break a sweat just thinking about moving. Perfect for a marathon, right? But the heat was just the appetizer for this buffet of bad decisions. The racecourse wasn't a nice paved road. No, it was a series of dusty rural country roads. When I say dusty, I mean the cars that were supposed to follow the runners and provide medical support or just watch the chaos unfold kicked up enormous clouds of thick, choking dust. We're talking 7 inches of loose dust. Runners described it as a constant, gritty fog that coated their throats and lungs. You couldn't see, you couldn't breathe. It was less like a foot race and more like running through a desert sandstorm. And what about water? Surely, on a scorching day with runners inhaling a pound of dirt, they'd provide plenty of water. Wrong, so wrong. The chief organizer, a man named James Sullivan, had a theory. He wanted to test the limits of human endurance by seeing what would happen if you purposefully dehydrated people. He was curious about how athletes would perform under extreme duress. So for the entire 26.2-mile course, he set up exactly one water station. Just one. It was a well located around the 12-mile mark. That's it. For comparison, a modern marathon has water stations every 1 to 2 miles. This wasn't a sporting event. It was a poorly regulated science experiment where the lab rats were world-class athletes. The result was predictable and horrifying. Runners started dropping like flies. One of the first to collapse was an American runner named William Garcia. He was found lying by the side of the road, suffering from severe internal hemorrhaging. The dust he had inhaled had coated his esophagus and stomach lining, tearing it apart and causing him to cough up blood. He almost died. Others just collapsed from heat stroke and exhaustion, their bodies completely shutting down from the lack of water. This wasn't a sport. It was a survival horror game, and the organizers were the final bosses. The course was littered with collapsed athletes, turning the marathon into a bizarre, grueling obstacle course of human suffering. Now, in the midst of this athletic apocalypse, we have our first anti-hero, Fred Lorz. Fred was a bricklayer from New York, a pretty decent runner, but even he wasn't immune to the insane conditions. Around mile 9, he was hit with severe cramps. He couldn't run anymore. So he did what any reasonable Olympian in crippling pain would do. He gave up and hopped into his manager's car. But Fred wasn't content to just get a ride back to the stadium. Oh no. For the next 11 miles, he rode along in the car, happily waving to the few spectators on the route and even shouting encouragement to the other exhausted, dust-choked runners as he cruised past them. Imagine you're hallucinating from dehydration, and you see one of your competitors driving by in a car, waving at you like he's in a parade. Eventually, the car broke down around the 19-mile mark. So Fred, feeling refreshed after his little joyride, simply got out and started jogging again. He was the first person to re-enter the stadium, and he leisurely trotted across the finish line to thunderous applause. He had won the Olympic marathon. He was crowned the victor, draped with a laurel wreath, and was even about to get his picture taken with Alice Roosevelt, the daughter of President Teddy Roosevelt. He milked the celebration for all it was worth. It was until spectators started shouting that he hadn't run the whole race that the truth came out. When confronted, Fred's legendary excuse was, "Oh, it was just a joke." He claimed he never intended to accept the medal, right? A joke that nearly got him a gold medal. The officials were not amused, and he was banned for life, though they later lifted it because I guess they appreciated the sheer audacity of it all. Classic Fred. But Fred Lorz wasn't even the most interesting character in this story. That title belongs to a Cuban postman named Andren Carvajal. Carvajal's journey to the Olympics was a marathon in itself. He was so poor that he raised money to get to St. Louis by running the entire length of Cuba, begging for donations along the way. He finally got enough cash, made it to New Orleans, and then promptly lost all of it in a dice game. Stranded, he had to hitchhike his way to St. Louis, arriving just minutes before the race was set to begin. He showed up at the starting line wearing a long-sleeved shirt, long street trousers, a beret, and heavy walking shoes. Another athlete, seeing his ridiculous outfit, took pity on him and cut his pants off at the knees with a knife. So there he was, a postman in makeshift shorts, ready to take on the world. Carvajal ran with incredible energy, chatting with the crowd and looking like he was having the time of his life. But he hadn't eaten in almost 40 hours. Midway through the race, famished, he spotted an apple orchard by the side of the road. He sprinted over, grabbed a bunch of apples, and started eating them. Unfortunately, the apples were rotten. Soon after, he was struck with terrible stomach cramps. He had to stop, lie down under a tree, and take a nap to recover. Yes, you heard that right. He took a nap in the middle of the Olympic marathon. After waking up, he just got back on the course and started running again. Despite losing all his money, wearing street clothes, eating rotten fruit, and taking a nap, Anderson Carvajal still managed to finish in 4th place. Imagine being one of the elite athletes who trained for years, only to be beaten by a guy who slept through half the race. Incredible. So, with the cheater disqualified and the napper in 4th, who actually won this nightmare race? The official winner was an American named Thomas Hicks, but his victory is one of the darkest and most bizarre in Olympic history. Hicks was a strong runner, but by mile 20, even he was starting to succumb to the brutal conditions. He was on the verge of collapse, begging his trainers for water. But remember James Sullivan's no water experiment? His trainers refused. Instead, they decided to give him something else. They concocted a special cocktail for him, a mixture of raw egg whites and a small dose of strychnine. Yes, strychnine. As in rat poison. In small doses, strychnine is a powerful stimulant for the central nervous system. In slightly larger doses, it's a deadly poison that causes agonizing convulsions. His trainers were essentially playing chemist with his life, hoping the stimulant effect would keep him going. This was the first recorded use of performance-enhancing drugs in the modern Olympics, and the drug of choice was literally poison. They gave him a dose, and it worked for a little while. He started running again, but soon began to falter. So they gave him another dose of strychnine, this time with a splash of brandy to wash it down. What followed was a terrifying spectacle. Hicks was no longer running. He was shuffling, a ghost of a man. He was hallucinating, his body moving on pure, poison-fueled adrenaline. His trainers practically carried him up the final hills, his legs barely functioning. When he finally stumbled across the finish line, he collapsed immediately. It took 4 doctors to revive him, and he was so delirious he couldn't even stand to receive his medal. He had won the Olympic gold, but he probably didn't know what country he was in, let alone that he had just finished a race. He lost 8 pounds during the race and later said he had no memory of the last few miles. He won, but at what cost? He nearly died for that gold medal, so let's recap. Did the Olympics once feature a poisoned winner, a car-riding cheater, a napping Cuban postman, and conditions so bad they nearly killed multiple athletes? Yes. Is it 100% factual? Technically, yes, every unbelievable part of this story is true. But it sounds like a script written by a chaotic AI that was asked to create the worst possible sporting event imaginable. The 1904 Olympic Marathon stands as a monument to human endurance, but also to human stupidity. It's a story so wild, it feels like it probably didn't happen. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories that defy all common sense, make sure to like and subscribe. Stick around for more from Probably Didn't Happen. 100% factual? Ish.